Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And this is Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
Girl, we got a story together.
Yes, we do, and it keeps on going, baby.
And I love it. I love it. So this is the season 3 recap. So we have made it through 3 seasons. This is the 34th episode that we have recorded, and it just blows my mind that people are still leaning in and excited. And
yeah, I really feel like this is, I feel like I don't want to wear people out with this, but since starting this podcast, it just has ignited something, I think, in both of us individually.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But also together, just excited about, yes, it's been fun telling your story, but I feel like our eyes are already on being excited about using this platform to tell other people's stories.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't even wait. And today, just today, I got a friend request from my co-defendant who has been in prison in Georgia. He just got out of prison. Well, not technically out of prison, but he's at work release in Georgia. And I thought, wow.
Well, your original co-defendant.
Yeah, well, he's my cousin.
Where it all started. Yeah, and
he's
your
my cousin too.
So you got a friend request from Facebook. See, and that means that he is out of prison.
He's at work. Okay, narrow it down. He's at work release and he's got a phone. So he can, do his thing. And I was just like, hey, cuz, I'm so happy that you're doing something different, trying. And he was like, yeah, I'm getting old. It's time to stop doing this. So, but it really just touched me. I was like, maybe we should get him on here and tell his story. Because his story is very different from my story because he's been out of prison for the last 30 years. That's
what I was going to say. You really kind of took steps and kept stepping away from that life and all the things you were doing. Mm-hmm. And he has kind of gone, like you said, in and out of prison for the last 30 years.
Well, I think his thing is he's rooted and grounded in his hometown, Phoenix City, where we grew up. And if you go back to, I think it was season 2, the last couple of episodes, when we were doing the parole plan, Steve was like, he was the one, I committed to allowing him to help me form a plan to get out of prison. And his first thing was, you can't go home to Mom and them. And I was like,
and them.
What? He was like, everybody got the plan to go home to Mom and them. And Mom and them, but it never works out. He said, you got to do something different. And I was like, I'm going home to Mama. Or Granny. I'm going somewhere. I'm going to be where my family is.
Well, it's kind of neat. So I have to say, it's nighttime. All our kids are in bed. Hey. And as we were walking down here to record, you told me that. You said, I just got
exciting.
The message from my cousin. He's out of prison. And
well, it's not just that. I felt like I heard something different in his voice this time. He's sick and tired of. So
how old is he now?
He's.
Are y'all the same age?
No, we're about a year. We're about a year and 2 months apart. So I'm 49. I just turned 49, so he would be 48.
Well, I can see he's pushing 50. It's golly, when is it gonna? Something's got to give.
Yeah. Well, when he got out in 2010, I think I've already covered this, but he was doing good for 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. But you don't go back to the same environment. You just don't. It's a hard thing, but it's the right thing to give someone that advice. And that was the advice that I got from Steve and from others when I was making my parole plan. And, if you go back to, what was it? Season 3, episode 4, The Unraveling. Mm-hmm. I was every day, I would wake up in the morning, what am I doing in Birmingham, Alabama with all this mess falling apart around me? When I can just go home, I can go to my mama's house, I can go to my Aunt Sue's, I can go to my Aunt Patsy's, I can go to Atlanta, live with my granny. And it took every ounce of, I don't know if it was courage or just determination.
Yeah.
That no, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to figure it out. And then I had a wonderful mentor in Steve Longenecker because he would always challenge me, you can't give up. It's real life. It's real life. You got to figure it out. You got to push through.
Well, I feel like that's pretty sound advice. For you, obviously, yes, like you're saying, coming out of prison, doing something different. But I feel like it's pretty sound advice for anybody. I'm thinking of myself right now. For okay, you want something different, you got to do something different. You got to go back to the same thing that was familiar, that was the road that led you to the place you didn't want to be.
And that was probably the biggest that's my biggest advice to him. That was actually what I told him. I messaged him. I said, I'm so glad you're at work release. Hope you're doing something different. And I just said, the best advice I was ever given was not to go home to Phoenix City.
Okay, so big question. Did you tell him about the podcast? Or
I did.
Know about the podcast? You did? Okay.
I said, I don't know if you know it or not, but my wife and I started a podcast, and you're in the first couple episodes. So.
Wow. I mean, I feel like he's kind of threaded through that whole beginning part. Like
he is. It was our story.
I would be so curious. Okay, this is like futuristic.
Like the first 3 or 4, that was our story. It wasn't just my story. It was his story
right.
too.
Like I said, futuristic. If he does end up listening to it, like it would be so interesting to get his thoughts on it.
I would love to tell his story.
Yeah.
Because his story, we, in 1994, our paths diverted. He went one way, I went another. And other than just a slight reconciliation in 2010, our paths have never really crossed again.
Yeah.
And I'd love to tell a story. Okay,
so let's just recap. So when you got out of prison, what year was that? And what month and year was that?
September of 1999.
So 1999. And then what year did you go and find your dad?
It was July of 2007. So about 7 years.
So this whole span of this season was about 7 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the previous season was about 7 years, season 2.
Yeah.
And then season 1 was about 4 years, so...
Right, but so much happened in that 7 years. Like, you got out, which was, like, huge, obviously.
It was a crazy decade.
Coming to a new place, the unraveling, the Leonardos, making a lot of money, then starting your own business.
And then being broke.
So many ups and downs. And this speaks to, and you kind of taught me this. You say, oh, gosh, so many people asked me to come and tell my testimony, tell, my story.
Yeah.
And it's so true just in this and even in what's going to come in season 4. You always say, well, which story do you want to hear?
What story you want to know?
Because it's not just a story about being in prison and getting out of prison. It's a story of, succeeding and failing.
A lot of failing.
The cycle of that again and again, which I think is true for everybody. Mm-hmm. We succeed and we fail, and some things, I don't know,
that's the process. We're all in a process all the time.
Right. Okay, so where do we start? We have had lots of questions from people, lots of commentary throughout this season. So where do you want to start with that?
I don't know. You want to go chronologically with the questions? Sure. Or... I think the Free at Last was the episode 1. That was when I got out. Mm-hmm. And then I talked about, the World Victory Church and all the,
right.
The release of the Grease Train and all, my time in Birmingham and all that stuff. I got a lot of feedback from people who were actually not closely connected to me, but in that church, I guess.
Who were in that church at the time?
Yeah. And one in particular, Scott, I won't say his last name, but he was like, I never thought that you saw yourself as a token convict. And I was like, but I did. He
messaged that to you after? Okay, I didn't know that.
And he's a fan, and then his son, Chris, he's a huge fan. He's always sending me messages. Just seeing it through my lens. They had a different lens. They had a lens of me coming out of prison, coming to church, doing all things, and then, that...
Which is so true. It
fell apart really fast.
Which is so true, and I think it's interesting. And I've a little bit thought of it, but not until you just said that people that knew you at that time and were a part of your life at that time, they're hearing you tell the story from your perspective, and they were there. A lot of the time, maybe not all the time, but that their lens and perspective was totally different.
Well, they have a different...
because that's true for... everybody in all stories.
They have a different reference point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then in the first couple episodes of season 3, I got my first hate mail or hate text.
Oh, remind me what that was.
It was someone that went to that church that got upset because I said something. I didn't say a name. And it was interesting.
Okay, people are trying to rack their brains.
I said something about a lady that said that Jesus told her to buy me a suit. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, and that she wanted a little something.
That was my perception going forward. But,
okay, so you got
she wrote me a vicious text. So, I didn't even respond. I'm like, I'm not going to respond. I mean, this is 20 plus years ago. I mean, this was I'm trying to tell the story from my perspective. And with each episode, I go through just a time of like trying to put myself back there, how I felt,
right,
the way I perceived it, right or wrong. You know, I may be wrong about that.
Absolutely.
But I can see how that could rub people the wrong way.
Right. But I mean, like you said, and I've heard this said before, I mean, apart from this podcast, that like no one can argue with your story. I mean, where you were and how you thought and how you perceived. And so. And
I don't feel like I'm like in the Straight Outta Prison podcast, I'm not like trying to make other people look bad and make myself look good, because I feel like I'm being vulnerable and saying the mistakes that I made and things that I learned, because I learned a long time ago, like, people don't care about your successes. I mean, they do. They celebrate them. But if you want to connect with people, you tell people where you failed, and you automatically have credibility. And really, I am blown away and amazed that since we've started Straight Outta Prison podcast, that just countless amounts of people. One of them's my neighbor that will just sit down and just pour their heart out to you and tell you their whole story.
Right.
Like the good, bad, and the ugly. And it's like I realize it's because I'm being vulnerable, then they feel like they can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that is where like real like change and, you know, that like God's grace and everything, that's where it happens. Like when we can be honest and, you know, my life's been messed up.
Yeah.
And just, it amazes me.
Yeah, that has been, I think we've talked about that probably more than anything, in the fact that people that we don't know very well or don't know at all.
I'm shocked.
Have come up and just like been just ready to like share
their whole story.
The good, the bad, the ugly, that would never be a thing probably, or I don't know, they just wouldn't do it if they hadn't heard you share.
Yeah, it like opens the door.
Yeah.
But that has changed me in a way where I want to keep being vulnerable, because that's how you can connect with people and build relationships. And, you know, it's that old C.S. Lewis quote where the greatest, I'm going to slaughter this, but he basically said that moment when you realize that somebody else says, "What? You too? I thought it was only me."
Yeah. Because
we all have things, we all have struggles, we all have a past, we all have things, we have secrets and, you know, all things.
Yeah.
But when you're like vulnerable enough to let them out with, you don't have to do it publicly, but like with another person.
Yeah.
That's where like true healing, I believe,
absolutely
begins.
Absolutely.
So
okay.
Where are we at?
So we had a question from Worth Wells, who's a Patreon. Thank you, Worth. And I think your name is awesome, by the way.
Patron, not a patron.
Oh, patron.
That means he subscribes to
Okay, anyway. Yeah, he subscribes and supports us. And anyway, he asked from, I don't remember which, maybe it was 7, but it was in regards to a relationship
7, 8, 9, 10.
With the girlfriend, Shana, who you thought you were going to marry.
Yeah.
That if she knew about the podcast or her family knew about the podcast, which is Steve and, you know, people that really were such an intimate part of your life and part of your journey. He asked if they knew about it.
Well, I responded to him, but we can respond on here.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of contact with her anymore. She's married. She has a beautiful family. She's living her best life, and that's wonderful. But, you know, after I married you, she unfriended me on Facebook, so I
wish y'all could see my face right now.
I always say, if your ex unfriends you on social media, you win.
Oh, stop.
So, no, I mean, that's the thing. But
that's the thing.
I don't have a relationship with her, so I didn't feel like I needed to like ask her permission. I on purpose did not share any of like her last name or any of that stuff. If you go back through this season, I didn't share Tanya's last name. I didn't share Jerry. I didn't share anybody's last name. I did share Steve's last name only because he'd already made himself public as part of my story. Like, he was in several news articles. He was in several magazine articles. And I felt like he had already made himself public as part of my story, so I felt like I could share his last name. But I didn't share anybody else's. But honestly, we'll cover this in season 4. But when we decided in 2015 to shut down Kairos for good, like we're done, we're moving on, I feel like that ended my relationship with them. So I love them, I respect them, there's been several funerals I've been to that I connect with them.
Well, when you say that ended your relationship with them, I do think it's interesting for you to say, because I've never heard you say that. Like, who is them?
Like Steve and Lenora and Tanya and Jeremy.
And why do you feel like that ended your relationship? This is something we never talked about, so
it's
that's why
just
I'm asking the
deep.
question.
It's deep. It was like, there was so much, if you go back to episode 8, the Kairos Cafe, like how we got involved in all the enmeshment we had with Kairos and the business and all that stuff. It was, we'll cover this in season 4, but just to make a long story short, like they didn't want me to end that. They wanted me to keep doing the same thing forever. And after we got married in 2013, I started going to Church of the Highlands, which was my first, like, no, because I stopped going to Grace and Truth. I felt like I needed some freedom. I needed to break free. I needed something else. And beyond that, we'll cover this in season 4. I felt like that was what Jesus told me to do, so that's what I did. So that was the beginning of that. But then when I closed down Kairos for good in 2015, it was like it ended everything we had been through. Mm-hmm. And I still, from the bottom of my heart, I love Steve and I appreciate him and I'm grateful for his influence in my life. But something got twisted with us and it needed to end.
So from your standpoint and only your standpoint, was it a bitter ending or was it just like, okay, this chapter is closed?
For me? You talking about for me?
For you.
No, I knew it was over. It was time.
No, but that's not what I asked. I asked if it was like a bitter ending or if it was just like, okay, the season is finished.
No, I wasn't bitter at all.
Okay.
I mean, I still feel sorrow and sadness, and I wish they didn't have to be like that.
You feel sorrow and sadness because you're not still in a relationship with him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if we see each other, we're friendly. What was the last thing we went to a funeral or something?
You have a family member of them. We went to a funeral, yeah.
And, I was like, he was very outgoing, spoke positively about me. But it was this, at the same time, it was like I knew something was different. Like for us going forward, it can never be the same.
Which is so interesting. I don't know if we mentioned this before.
But that's not on my part. I mean, it's not on my part.
What's not on your part?
Like, it not being the same. Because I feel like I can get over anything. I can. But it's like, just too much water under the bridge. It goes back to, I believe it was episode 8 of this season, season 3, where the lawyer, when I put all my stock in Steve's name, he looked at me and said, don't do this. This is not going to work out. It's going to work out. It's going to end badly. And I said, well, this is what we're doing. I found out I can't get these loans because I'm on parole. And he said, well, I'm your lawyer. It's my job to advise you. And I advise you not to do this. This is not going to end well. And I was like, well, this is what we're doing. So just, I'm paying you. So you need to drop the papers, do what I say. But that's where I was then. But now he was right. Mm-hmm. He was right. And, we reconnected with Tanya when you were pregnant with the boys.
Yeah.
Because like a year before, she had given birth to twins. Mm-hmm. And they were in the NICU for, longer than our boys.
You're right.
But our boys were in the NICU for what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
Well, we'll cover this when we get there. But it was traumatic and it was hard. But she reached out and she asked if she could come see, and we reconnected.
She was so very kind. I feel like I need to.
Well, she understood what you were going through,
right?
Because she had been through it herself, and it was just like, God, I love Tanya. But then we tried to stay connected after that, and I think I remember I sent her a text. It might have been 6 months later, and I was like, I love you, and I'm so thankful for your presence in my life, and you have added so much value to me. And I hate it that we decided to go into business together and ruin that because there's so much water under the bridge. But it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's just, when it's time to move on, it's time to move on. But, I have no ill feelings. I have love and respect for them. And to this day, I've told you this time and time again. Steve was the man who filled a father role in helping me transition from a boy to a man. So I love him.
And I have to say, like, as your wife now, and this is like, we're getting deep in this now, but as your wife, I want to like honor him and just say how much I value
Absolutely
how much he's spoken to your life and bring you to that point, because truly without his presence and without, the counsel and all the things, like I'm not sure that I would have been married you. I don't mean that but I just feel like.
Well, I'm going to say this, and this is deep. It may be too deep for this podcast. But when I was going through counseling, Gordon Dalby, this guy that I was going through stuff, he said that you have a voice inside of you that you hear talking to you. And it's your Father's voice. And that's primarily how God speaks to you, is through your Father's voice. And I had this negative, critical, you're never enough, you're never good enough voice up until that time. That was my dad's voice. Like, he was always fussing at me or telling me, like, making something so hard.
James Keith Jones's voice.
Yes, my James Keith Jones Sr. I'm
Senior
James
voice.
Keith Jones.
Right, yeah.
Jr. But I actually wrote this in a birthday card for Steve when he turned 50. I said, somehow, I don't know how this happened, but I don't hear that voice anymore. I hear your voice. And it's a calm, reassuring, fatherly, everything's going to be okay. You can figure this out. You can push through. And he was so, like, overcome with emotion. Like, he couldn't even talk for, like, 10 minutes. But I was like, I wasn't trying to make you cry. I was just saying thank you. Like, thank you for being that person for me. So he was that person for me, and he will always be that person
That's
for
a
me.
gift, yeah.
It is.
For sure. That's awesome.
So, but as far as, like, a relationship, it's like there's too much water under the bridge. We just move on. Mm-hmm. And I wish it was different, but it's not. And it's kind of like with my dad, I wish I had a relationship with my dad, but he doesn't really pursue relationships with anybody in his family. So I feel like
there's so much here we could like unpack, and maybe we'll later. So let's
get back to season 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's read the cap.
So we had, there was Eric from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And he wrote or texted, I cannot remember which, but tell us about Eric.
So I think it was episode 8 where I was talking about Carl's Cafe, I was so frustrated with the process of opening a restaurant that there was like a drain hidden that I had to uncover. And I'm not
Wait, a what?
A drain in the floor.
Oh, a drain
in the kitchen. And I had to like chisel it out of tile. And I was so, I'm not good. I mean, I can paint stuff. I can like make stuff better, but like deep construction, I'm not good at that. Mm-hmm. But I was on the floor, dirty, like picking away at this tile, trying to uncover this drain. And I got so frustrated and so mad, and I was like beating. I pitched a fit, basically. And I was beating on the floor, and I was like, all I wanted to do was cook some chicken. And he happened to be walking by at the time and like caught me in the middle of my fit. And I told that story in episode 8. And he texted me and he was like, I don't remember that. I remember you being like Eeyore, like just super like wah wah wah. And then when he said, I don't remember it that way. So when I explained it to him, I said, probably the reason why I remember it is because Steve retold that story so many times. And he was like, oh, yeah, I do remember that. So that was good.
That's kind of fun, yeah. I mean, it's another, like, going back to how we remember things differently because we're all in different places.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rhonda Ruckel, and I will, so Rhonda, and this just, like...
She's a patron.
She's a patron. And it just warms my heart. I cannot even tell you how much it warms my heart. I can't explain to you. Both my parents are in heaven. Mm-hmm. Rhonda Ruckel and Steve Ruckel were my parents' best friends for, 40
forever
years. And they would, this is kind of neat. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but they knew each other since they were first married before they had kids. And they would go to a beach house every year, the same beach house. And
I'm looking
for
at a
week.
picture of that now in our podcast.
Yeah, in our room, there's a picture of my dad and the other three guys. And they would go to a beach house every year. And the only rule was it was no kids, but only nursing babies. So if they just had a baby and the baby was nursing, like those kids were allowed, the babies were allowed, but not kids. And they were so, I mean, I feel like this is such a foreign idea and concept nowadays that the same 4 couples every year for 40 years and they never missed a year. Not once.
That's beautiful. And then after your dad died, when I knew your mom, she went every year.
Yes, my mom went without my dad, and they were just their best friends. And they didn't start as best friends, but they just grew into it. And they actually lived in all different states many of the times. But anyway,
what's that
she's
got to do
become
with
a
Straight Outta
patron.
Prison?
Well, she's been listening, and I didn't know she'd been listening. And she became a patron, and she said that it was just so neat to hear like me tell stories, and also when I reference my mom and dad, it just like makes her warms her heart or whatever.
Well, she also said that was funny. I read that message. You shared it with me. She said, "Well, James really doesn't hold anything back."
Yeah, and I mean, Rhonda and Steve just have a wealth of experience and knowledge in ministry, out of ministry, and business. They live in Virginia Beach right now. And they're just a gift to me. And it was just really neat to get messages and realize like someone like that is listening and feels like she's getting a piece of my mom and dad. And by her telling me, I'm getting a piece of my mom and dad. So
beautiful.
That's kind of neat. Okay, what you got?
Where do we go from here? So what was your favorite episode? I know what you're going to say, the Denver, Colorado, when I found my biological
Well, okay,
father.
yes, that is, okay, I would say, but a close second, and this is so funny, is the episode, I don't remember which, that we really, like, unpacked your relationship with Shana.
Top of the mountain.
Top of the mountain.
Why is that? That's weird.
I don't know, it is weird. Something like this feels scandalous. I mean, in the most innocent of ways, but like to unpack your relationship. And you even said after we finished recording that, you're like, I don't know if I could have done that with you and your ex, because
no, I don't think I could have heard all the details of because you almost married a Swedish guy.
Right. I was actually engaged to a Swedish guy.
The Swedish man with the big mole.
I mean, I was
face.
kind of the runaway bride, which is going to be unpacked in the next season. But he was like, I don't know if I could have like gone through that, which maybe you have the opportunity to. I don't know.
Will. I don't want extra details.
But it's just fascinating to me, I think, because we all have, and how intense those emotions and feelings can be. And I could feel that, honestly.
Well, I really struggled with that episode because I'm telling about my love for her. And I was deeply in love with her.
I could feel that.
But I'm sitting across the table from my beautiful wife, who I love more.
I also know that.
And it was just weird to tape that. It was almost like if you would have said, let's don't do this, I would have said, okay.
I think in our time and experience, though, is that I know and can feel, and it's like this profound sense of it's a different kind of love.
Yeah, it was more of a fantasy type.
And the older you get, you realize you can just see and understand when you have this like passionate, kind of like needy, desperate. Desperate's a probably good word. Like desperate.
It was
love.
desperate.
Yeah, opposed to a calm, like peaceful knowing.
One of the things I noted about you when we started dating, it was not that. It was not the like I'm gonna die if I don't see Haley. But I coined a phrase during that season when we were dating, and we'll talk about this in the next season. It was like a joyful anticipation. It wasn't like crazy. It wasn't like I'm gonna die. I just want to die for you. But it was real, and it was, I think, the way that God ordains us to fall in love. But she was coming out of a divorce. She was in a horrible situation. She was wounded and broken, and just like, I don't know. Many times I thought about her as like a little bird that you would find that had a broken wing. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm serious. Like,
that's kind of sad, but yeah,
she was in a bad place. But at the same time, I was too, because
yeah,
I was past 30, and I was like, is there something wrong with me? Mm-hmm. Like, the kids in the youth group were getting married. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I went on dates. I tried to connect, and I just couldn't. I mean, there was nobody for me. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, just the way I grew up, I knew I wasn't going to be involved in, like, a bitter, like, marriage that I didn't want to be in. I couldn't do that. So I was a little desperate. So we were both desperate.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I feel like that was part of the process for her, and it was part of the process for me. And in the end, it was a good thing, even though there was a lot of pain under the bridge.
So this is the like ultimate cheese train, but like this is why country music is popular. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But like I feel like the only song that comes to mind when we're talking about this is "God Bless the Broken Road, Let Me Stray to You."
I mean, it did.
It's so cheesy, but it's true, and I feel like
It did.
it's true for all of us. We have
During
these
this
things.
season 3, I was into all that. You know, probably the first episode of season 4, we'll find out that that road was not a good road. And it turned into a bitter, painful road.
That's the thing. I mean,
don't give it all away.
But my point is I feel like it's kind of important to have that perspective of like, you know, there's going to be heartache. There's going to be things that aren't good. There's going to be like wrong choices, all the things.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you're following Jesus and keep taking steps, like it's gonna be good.
He'll show you what you need to do.
Okay.
Well, it was weird. The thing that fascinates me the most is that you almost got married. You almost got married to the blonde Swedish guy with the big mole on his face.
Stop. That is so mean.
No, he did have a big mole.
It
on his
doesn't matter,
face.
but I know what you're doing right now.
Anyways, but the Swedish man that told you had to eat your fork upside down.
Okay. Anyway, we're gonna get to that.
And then
It's
I
like
almost
a teaser.
married Shana, but you know we both figured out this is not the path. This is not right. And if you had married him or I would have married her, we would never. There would be no Team Jones. There would be no Lula May. There'd be no Royal Grant. There'd be no Judas James. And it fascinates me. Like God always knows, you know, let you do your fantasies and get it out of the way.
Well, I've always been so interested. I mean, just the last episode we recorded with finding your biological dad. And I mean, even before I met you, I was always fascinated with this, how it was explained to me about how DNA and how if you don't have exactly that exact person would not be, it would be a different person.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So like our kids, like you just said, who they are, exactly who they are, they would not be, even if your mom hadn't have had the thing with the Greek guy, which is like, seems like this like dramatic, you know, drama thing, which it was at the time.
Yeah.
But obviously there was goodness to come out of it, and it was purposed for you and for me and for them. I mean, to me, that's just such a like neat.
It is neat.
Thing.
I mean, I think out of all our kids, Lula is she's got a little Greek in her. I mean, I tease with you, you know, my kids are quarter Greek. I'm half Greek, they quarter Greek.
They are, yeah.
But Royal Grant, our baby boy.
He's a stud.
He is a stud. But he looks the most like me. He's the dark hair, green eyes. And it's just makes me cry looking at him. Like, I don't know.
It's neat.
Never mind. I don't even know what I'm saying.
Okay, so I can't remember what I just said.
Let's look at the Leonardo's episode was the most like talked about. I got more feedback from that from customers, people that I knew, people that I didn't even know that were customers of Leonardo's. Like, I mean, we ran into people at church, like the lady that runs the kids. Like, she was like, Leonardo's, I love Tony. I love Leonardo's and the yeast buns.
I mean, even just like, we haven't even talked about it, and now I want Italian, so.
Yeah. No, there was nothing like Leonardo's. That was a very special place. But Dana, Tony's daughter, she wanted to know, like, if you're going to do Leonardo's, let me know so I can listen. And we were texting back and forth. And she was like, I'm so nervous. I'm nervous about what you're going to say.
Oh, was she nervous you were going to say something bad, or?
Well, we had a little bit of conflict, but it was like...
You and her personally?
Yeah, but it was like conflict that you would have had with Hobie, your brother. It's just like, those things happen.
Yeah.
But I was like, don't be nervous. It's all good. I mean, I'm telling the story. That was a crucial part of my life.
Right.
And after the episode aired, she listened to it. She was very, grateful for the way I talked about her dad. But her dad, Tony Folletta was like a father to me. Even to this day, like things that we're doing in our business now, like so many things that he taught me that, just how to embrace life and to tell stories and to, just live. But she like brought up stories that I didn't remember and was like, remember this and remember that, remember this, remember that. And I was like, dang, maybe you need to be on the recap. Or maybe we need to do a Leonardo's recap or a Leonardo's reunion like episode, because there was so much life that happened in that little space of Italian restaurant goodness. 7 years of my life, that was as long as I was in prison.
Yeah. And
recently I was in the south of Birmingham area, and I was riding... I think I rode by and looked at my first house I bought. I just wanted to see my plants.
Of course you did.
I just wanted to make sure they were taking care of them also. But then I was like, I think I'll ride by Leonardo's and look, and I saw that it had been turned into a barbecue place. Moe's Original Barbecue. So I was like,
oh.
It was lunchtime. I was like, well, I could go in here and eat. And I went in.
Wait, when was this?
It was probably about a year ago.
Okay.
And I went in and I had lunch. And the vibe in there was like redneck fabulous.
No, in your redneck terms.
Well, no, they had the dining room was filled with picnic tables. Okay. So it was just like, I had my lunch, I ate my lunch. It was because I love Moe's Original Barbecue. It's awesome. It's good barbecue. But I was just like, I live so much life in this building. And, I went in the bathroom and was like, just remembering, like, in the men's room, if you went in the bathroom and you used a urinal, there was a deer that Tony had hanging up that would talk to you. He was into all that stuff. And, he was like right wing, like he was Republican, and I remember during I think it was the 2008 presidential campaign, like he went in with a Sharpie and wrote on the thing where you mash to let the air come out. He was like, mash here for Hillary's latest message. Hot air.
Oh my gosh.
But it was crazy that, just all the life that was. And if you went into the women's bathroom at Leonardo's, he had heated seats for the women, not for the men. Just
heated toilet seats?
Yeah, it was this thing. Like everything's got to be great. So we got to do something special. And I remember when I painted the bathrooms, like we remodeled the bathrooms, he had a lot of like Catholic, like religious art. And he had a picture of Mary holding Jesus, and I hung it in the bathroom. And I remember that Boo, who ran the office, was so upset with me. Like, you don't put Jesus in the bathroom. You put Jesus in the bathroom. So I was like, it's a painting. Those are white people, and Jesus was Jewish anyway, so that's not really that. But just all the memories, and it just flooded me.
Mm-hmm. That's really neat.
I think the most touching message I've gotten this season was from Chris. He was the son of a couple that I went to World Victory Church with.
Okay.
The Release the Grease. They were part of that, but then they weren't a part of it because they figured it out. But I think I referenced this in episode 3. I'm talking about my housewarming and all that. They decided to have a housewarming party for me.
Yeah.
And his mom gave me her childhood, the table that her family had, they grew up with, chairs.
Did you mention that in the episode?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember that.
But she also gave me like coffee tables and end tables that she grew up with. And it was like this cherry wood with glass, but then there were shadow boxes in it. And she was like, you can do whatever you want with this, but like my mom put our baby shoes and stuff in it. And I kept those for years and years before I got rid of them. Mm-hmm. I think it was after I started Kairos when I had to downsize. But he sent me a message, and I saw it on Facebook, and it said, "I'm so sad." And I was like, oh, I wonder what I said that made him so sad. And I opened the message, and he was like, "I'm so sad that the season 3 is over. Like, we've been binging."
Oh.
And so that was cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we need to talk about, too, your cousin Cassandra, who's been listening, who's also a patron. I can't even say is that
Patron.
right? Patron, yeah. Okay, so she's been listening.
Why don't we just say she's a subscriber?
Oh, a subscriber. Okay. So, and she wrote you a message that was so funny to me, talking about during the last episode, finding your like biological dad, and if your granny knew and realizing she always knew and you were her favorite. Okay, so what did Cassandra say?
She basically admitted that I always knew your granny's favorite, and that's okay. But she prefaced that with letting me know that she was my granddaddy's favorite, which is true. Granddaddy always had a sweet spot for her. And she said she always knew that my dad was not my biological father, but she overheard an adult conversation that she didn't understand. And then she said that she never saw me as not family. Like, it's just weird. It's a weird dynamic. And then it's odd that she's so interested in the podcast, because I feel like Cassandra is my cousin, and we weren't close when we were kids, but we became, probably on my dad's side, she's the closest one to that I can connect with the most as far as cousins. She's the most like my granny as far as like keeping traditions, like memories, and all the things.
So remind me which cousin, like, how's she your cousin? So she was
my dad's younger brother, Roger.
Okay.
He had 3 kids. Renee, Cassandra was the second, and Boomer, that was Roger Jones Jr.
Right.
She was the second one, but she was, as an adult, she's the most like my granny. Mm-hmm. Like, she does the traditions, everything that granny taught us to do, like, she's going to do it. And I mean, even like when we were planning our wedding, your mom was, we spent 17 hours at the florist, and I was so aggravated with all that.
Slight exaggeration, but yes.
Well, it was a long day at the florist. Figuring out, it was like, just do some flowers, like, figure it out. But my granny, I remember when my Aunt Glennis got married, my granny, a tradition on her side of the family was that the groom buys the flowers for the bride. Mm-hmm. And I told your mom that, and she was like, "That's not a thing." And I was like, "Yes, it is. That's what we're doing." So, order your flowers, do whatever you want to, but I'm going to have somebody do Haley's flowers. And, I had a good friend, Viola, who was...
My bouquet.
Very your bouquet.
Yeah.
But my granny taught me that, and, if she told me that was what it was supposed to be, it was what it was supposed to be. But Cassandra's like that. Like, I remember when we were like unraveling my granny's home, and she was going to live with my Aunt Glennis. Like, we're going through, Granny was big on, you can have this, you can have that, you can have this. And Cassandra wanted the love letters that my granddaddy wrote Granny. Like, she had them categorized because he was in the Air Force. He was in the Army first, and then it turned to the Air Force, but he was away a lot, so he wrote her a lot of letters. And she wanted those letters. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want the letters, but I wanted other things like, there's a trunk and, just think like she's sentimental like me.
Yeah.
I think she's like the most like me. So I really appreciate her, just the way she's reached out to me and encouraged me and telling me to keep going and, give me a lot of attaboys for,
right.
Sharing the vulnerable parts and the hard parts. But, I don't know. At the end of the day, I struggled with episode 10 where we talked about me finding my biological father, because I talk about that to other people, but I don't talk about that much with my family.
Yeah.
Especially the Jones side, because it seems weird. It seems weird to talk about, I'm not really a Jones.
Well, you say you talk about it with other people, but I don't even think you do a lot. I feel like I do a lot more talking with other people about that than you do.
Well, I will talk about that with people in Birmingham. But I don't really... I remember the first time I shared that with my mom's sister, Brenda, and my cousins. that's actually my co-defendant's family. Like my Aunt Brenda, like was freaking out, like, that's not true. And I was like, it's true. Like, it's true. I don't care what you say.
Cue my eye roll. Well, okay, so I think that's a good segue into, and I've had several people ask me, like via email or patrons and friends, about your mom and what she thinks. And it's interesting because I know, I mean, even before we recorded this, or even before the idea of a podcast was in our hearts or minds, you were very concerned about just honoring her and...
Well, I don't ever want to hurt her.
Right. But, I mean, especially in this season when there's... I mean, when you talked about finding your dad, yes. But, I mean, really throughout. Like, you want to talk about that a little bit? Like, your thoughts on that?
There are 2 stories that Mama did not want me to ever share. And one of them was my brother, because that's her greatest pain. Mm-hmm. You know, that he got ripped away from her and that, you know, she allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
And there's a deep part of me that will never understand how you can let that happen. Because if anybody tried to take one of my kids and go anywhere, I would move heaven and earth, nuclear bombs, you know, whatever I need to do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have my kids.
Yeah.
So that was a great area of pain for her that she didn't want, like, made public.
Right.
And then the truth about my dad, like, initially she didn't want it made public, but she's made peace with that. It is what it is. I remember when I started Kairos Cafe, you know, there's a lot of, try to do marketing stuff, and I made a coupon one time, you know, like $1 off your lunch or whatever. And I put my face, I mean, I was in a weird place then. I was like into like superimposing faces on other stuff.
That's definitely
with my computer.
A weird place.
No, it was fun. Like I don't know, I made a lot. It started with birthday cards. I was in a weird
place in life. Yes.
Well, I don't do that anymore, but I mean, it was still fun. Like, you know, like, if you're making
it sound like it was some deep thing, like I was in a weird place in life.
No, I mean it was weird, but it was like I had this. It was called Microsoft Picture It, and you could like wipe somebody else's face out and put somebody else's face in somebody else's body, and it was like kind of like the. I don't know. It was what I was doing then. Yeah. I don't do that anymore. But I made a coupon for $1 off, and my face didn't look right in George Washington's body. It just didn't look right. So I got the $50 bill, and President Grant, that's on the $50 bill, I superimposed my face into his face, and it was like, that works. Like I could work with President Grant, and I put that in there. But when I put some signage on the windows, that was what I used. That picture of President Grant's body off the $50 bill with my face in it.
You were definitely in a weird place.
But he had like white hair. And I remember she was like, you look like that man from Denver. But it was like somehow
AKA your biological
somehow
father.
That helped her make peace with that.
That's
and
weird.
She did.
I mean great also.
And she still don't like to talk about that. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I won't let her not talk about it. It is what it is. Like, it is what it is. Let's move on from that. So she's made peace with that. But it is, I got several, after we aired the episode 10, I've got several messages was like, how did your mom like deal with that? And she dealt with it. I think she honestly really wanted me to find out, but didn't want it to be a thing. But she was kind of excited.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like anytime that truth comes to the surface, it can be painful, but it can also just trigger or ignite freedom on some level. And especially for her, that like, I mean, especially in terms of that was, I mean, like you said, it is what it is. That's your dad. And look at you now. There's purpose in everything. I mean, seriously. So, I mean, so this leads us to, we had talked about, I think it was the last episode, a letter like once you found your dad, your biological
I had questions.
father,
I needed
and
answers.
he wrote you a letter, like trigger my memory a little bit about what that was.
We connected on the phone. We couldn't really talk because his English was so broken. Then we did MSN Messenger and we went back and forth. And I said, I have a lot of questions that I need answered.
Yes. Okay.
And he asked me to write him a letter and write all down, and he would answer. He said, I'll answer every question.
Okay. Yeah. You actually found the letter.
I haven't.
I've actually never heard this letter either. So you're going to read this letter of him answering your questions, right?
If you want.
I do want.
Okay.
I want.
So this was July the 28th, 2007. It was about 3 weeks after I went to Denver, and I connected with him. And the blonde Greek guy, who I can't remember his name, he went back to Greece, sat down with my dad and my two half-brothers and his wife, and explained to them everything and gave them the things that I brought to Denver. I have some regret in this because I received a ton of pictures from this deal, but it was through MSN Messenger, and somehow I lost them. I don't have the pictures anymore.
Yeah.
But one of them was my brother Nikos, who was weeping, looking at a picture of me, because we kind of looked them up. Like the youngest one, Costas, we don't look anything alike. Mm-hmm. I call him Big Head. You got a big old head. I don't know where your head came from, but it must have come from your mama's side. But my half brother Nikos, you can tell we're brothers. We have the same body. We have the same hairline, head from the top.
Yeah, you do.
Same
That's
beard,
amazing.
everything. Yeah. And even, my son Judah, he has my body. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't think he was my son because he's blonde-headed and blue eyes. He looks just like you.
Yeah.
But he has my little short body. Mm-hmm. And when I was researching this and I was looking at pictures of Nikos, it was we have the same body. He's got Judah's body. It's just weird. And, he's on the other side of the planet. But he sent me this letter. It just answered my questions. It says Jim Paris. That was his American name.
Right.
That was the name they changed him to when he came through immigration. But then it says his Greek name is Dimitrios Paraskevopoulos, Vula, Athens, Greece, all that stuff. So it says, Hello, James. I was born August 1st, 1948 in a place called Nemea. Remember Hercules?
Okay, pause. So you had sent him a ton of questions, right?
I wanted answers.
Wait, but you had sent him a ton of questions, and this letter is answering the questions that you had sent, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So he says he was born in a place called Nemea. Remember Hercules? And I'm like, Hercules is a fantasy, bro. But, Greeks in the mythology, they really subscribe to all the Greek mythology stuff. Right. And I try to talk to my brother, Kostas, about the Greek Orthodox and, about Jesus and all this stuff. And he was like, I don't do church. And so I was like, what do you mean you don't do church? And he was like, when I was a kid, I called the priest in a fuck shake.
What?
This is what he said.
What is that? I hesitate to even say it. A fuck shake?
That's what he said.
What is a fuck shake?
Apparently there were two priests doing the nasty man to man. But no, I had that same gosh. What is a fuck shake? I've never heard of that. I thought it was a translation problem, but he was like, no, they were doing. I caught him in a car, and I've never been interested in church. So, anyways, that's a side story. He was born in 1948 in a place called Nemea in Corinthos, which I think is was where the Corinthian church in the Bible was.
Yeah.
From. It's a town not far from Athens in Peloponnesos. My father's name was Nick and my mother's name was Anastasia. They both died some years ago. I have a sister, Katie. She's 2 years older than me. I went to America the first time in 1966. My father was there before me. I met your mother in 1971, but we were very young. She was a good and pretty girl. After so many years, I still wonder why we got lost. She has all the answers. I would like to know, too. So basically, he was like, she knows. I don't know nothing. I don't know why.
You mean happened. Of how they got disconnected?
Yeah, why this happened. So I came back to Greece in 1981. At 1976, I got married with Eve, and we stayed 3 years in Denver. In November 1978, we got a son named Nikos. When we came back to Greece, we got divorced after 2 years. Since then, Nikos lives in Thessalonica, another biblical town, which this was freaking me out. 500 kilometers far from Athens. We meet once or twice a year. In 1987, I got married again with Debbie. On May 26, 1987, Kostas was born. We live in Voula. It's a place near Athens. Our house is 100 millimeters far from the sea! Exclamation point. James, I want you to know that I'm really happy to find out about you. Even though so many years have passed, I consider you my family. Nikos and Kostas are very happy to know that they have another brother, and Debbie is very happy for us too. We want to meet you very much. You're the only son that looks like me. The other two look like their mothers. I saw your girlfriends at the photos, and she looks very pretty. Dinos told me you're a very nice couple. What does she say about our story? From now on, we must always stay in touch. Love and kisses, your dad. So, aww. I mean, he told me the things that I needed to know. But at the end of the day, I realized I'm not Greek. I'm American. I'm James Keith Jones Jr. And if it was just my dad, I would be able to disconnect from that and connect to this. But because of my grandparents, you know, my granny, Sarah Jones, and my granddaddy, James Cecil Jones, James C. Jones, I just realized I'm a Jones. Like, I mean, I want to know the truth. I want to know this part of my history and where I come from. But at the end of the day, you know, there's a scripture in the Psalms where God says he places you in the family that you're supposed to be in. And the family that I was supposed to be in was the Jones family. So it really, I didn't fully get what I thought I was supposed to get out of that, but it did bring peace to me.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying, but there's also an element that I have that I just believe, and I don't know why I believe it, honestly, but it just feels like somewhere in my core, I know it, and
know what?
That is just, everything you said is true, but also that your origin, your biological origin was there, that there's some kind of, and I don't even think we're going to know it, or I'm not going to know it this side of heaven, but there's something being weaved into that story of the purpose of, you say, okay, I have family in like the biblical times and your biological dad is Greek, and I don't know what or how, but it just feels like there's purpose in that somehow.
Yeah, you know, I've never been, but I still want to go. I want to visit, but it's not going to make me either way. Right,
and that is like, it's not like you haven't made that a part of your identity, which I think is healthy, but also I think it's just kind of neat to know that, I mean, there's some kind of purpose. We may never know this side of heaven, but I believe there is one.
Yeah.
Of how it all came to be, and, you know, the origin, and how if, Dimitri Paraskevopoulos.
Jim Paris. But his, like, biological makeup made you who you are. Not just me. I mean, you look at my kids.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he made like you, and you had to be how you are to make our kids, my kids.
I think the thing that fascinates me the most is that he had two sons. Well, he had three sons, but he had two sons and one he didn't know about. And Nikos and Kostas, they both look like their mamas. And then I'm like his spitting image. It's just crazy. I mean, there's something weird about that. Like,
yeah, I
mean, the same eyes, the same everything. It's just weird.
That is weird.
But at the end of the day, that brought me peace, and a closure to that was that my name is James K. Jones. I'm not going to be James K. Paraskevopoulos. I mean, that is just a mouthful to try to say.
But you never know, like, and this is kind of fun to think about. I've actually never said this to you, but it just occurred to me now. Like, if one of our kids just get fascinated with a story and, like, decide they're going to name one of their kids, like, Paris, or, like, you know, like.
I would be fine with that.
It would just be fun.
I would have no problem with that.
You know.
Well, you know, when we got married in 2013, we had a cross that had like my family names on it and your family names, and we put it together at our ceremony. Mm-hmm. And it was like our names, our mother's maiden names, our father's, grandmother's. It was like 4 names. So you got like 4 names on yours. You got like Jones, Hobart, Orgill, and what's the other one? Whatever. But I added Paraskevopoulos to mine, like an extra. Like I got an extra name on mine.
I love that. I mean, because
that's who I am.
And it's part of it's part of their heritage too.
Yeah. I mean, my babies are quarter Greeks.
Yeah. Okay, so we're running out of time. So what's next? Season 4? Season 4 is going to be the last season of our story.
Well, we say that, but we don't know.
We say that, but we don't know.
Who knows where we go from here?
So what is next?
We just need to keep telling the story. I mean, this season is ending in 2007. We met in 2012. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of water under the bridge that happened between that, and then there was a lot of stuff that happened after that. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to stop doing this Straight Outta Prison podcast. I love what we're doing here. I would like to tell other people's stories. Yeah. I mean, there's so many, like Mr. Gilbert or even my co-defendant. I definitely want to do probably a separate podcast, but like the Culver House murders. You know, he was my cell partner for the last 2 years I was in prison. Fascinating story. A lot of secrets and, you know, like there was a movie made about that where they said he killed his parents because of money, and he didn't. You know, and I know the intimate details of that. I would love to do that.
Well, I guess the bottom line is something's coming.
Oh yeah, we haven't
chosen the exact like next path. There's several different opportunities.
We got to keep going,
right?
But one thing I've figured out during this season was we got to do the ads, even though I don't want to do the ads.
Okay, let me just pause there. What he means, because that was a quick little transition in conversation. Is that okay? So from the beginning, James is like, I don't want any like sponsors or ads, meaning like people who want to advertise on this podcast. And in the last month or so, James has relinquished and said, okay, fine, we can let people do ads on our...
That's how you, like, fund it.
Well, okay, so here's the bottom line, is that I know we spoke about this in the very beginning of tonight. When we started recording, is that I think both of us have realized, like, this is something that we feel like...
We can keep doing it.
Well, hold on. Let me talk. Is that it's just more than just telling a story. It just, we really feel like this is like something we're purposed to do. Yeah. And we feel like it's uncovered gifts that we both have and just purpose. And we're really excited about it. And so we are wanting to find ways that obviously we need to provide for our family. And so if we feel like this is our purpose, we need to find ways that we can do both in one.
We need to play the game like it is. And the game is, if you want to, I mean, we have a lot invested in the podcast stuff. I mean, financially, in time and everything, you have to play the game, and the game is ads. And so... So
you're going to be seeing something rolling out pretty quickly here.
We're getting ready to start doing ads, but this is what I've learned from listening to other podcasts. If you don't want to hear the ads, you just hit the 30-second button.
What are you saying, James? Like, people want to advertise their stuff that people can hear it. So.
I'm just keeping it real. I would rather have sponsors than have ads.
Well, it's just the same thing. It's another word for it.
Well, anyways, we got to figure out a way to keep going. I mean, bottom line. I'm learning, if you're going to be in a world, you got to play the game. So I don't really like ads, but let's do it. Yeah. Handle business.
And another thing we're excited about doing is that we have now launched these workshops that we're doing. So they are CEU certified, which is CEU stands for Continuing Education Units. A lot of like nurses, realtors, whatever, a lot of businesses, you have to have these CE credits. And so we're offering that in workshops that are an hour and a half. We include lunch, and we're going through the keys that really ties into our teaching companion to the Straight Outta Prison podcast.
Narrowing the Gap. That has been so fun.
Which is named Narrow the Gap. So that's another thing we're super excited about.
So we're working on that. But I just realized I had one fact check.
Oh, okay.
From one of the followers of the show. His name is Michael. I won't say his last name. I think it was yesterday, he sent me a message, and he said in whatever season, I think it was episode 9 where I got arrested. He said, you said that you got arrested in Dale County, which was Dothan, but that's Houston County. Dale County is the Ozark area. And he also said, I'm enjoying the podcast. I love it, blah, 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 all the things. So I need to clarify that. I did not have any charges in Dale County. My charges were in Houston County, which was Dothan. And I was trying to figure out, why did I say Dale County? Why did I even do that? But it's because we've been going through this thing about we want to do a podcast with the Culver House murder story. Mm-hmm. And my mind was there, and I'd been studying that and going through all that, and that was Dale County.
Oh, okay.
So he was from Arrington, so it was Dale County. So that I guess that's why I said Dale County, but it was correction. I did not get arrested in Dale County. I got arrested in Houston County.
So it's Chris?
No, his name is Michael.
Oh, Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, he helped us.
Yeah, I have to say, James's memory is insanely amazing. But obviously sometimes it's it's amazing you can remember the things you remember.
Well, I think the reason why I was thinking Dale County was because I had spent 6 hours that day, researching the Culver House murders. And because I don't think we'll do that on Straight Outta Prison. I think we'll do that as a separate podcast. I really want to tell that story. I feel like I'm actually compelled that I'm supposed to tell that story because there's so many secrets, so many deep, cover-ups.
And you lived with him for 2 years and really heard his side and from his perspective, which, from what you told me, hasn't been told.
No. Well, he started in 1998 or 1990, I can't remember the year. But he started meeting with somebody that was writing a true crime book about, what really happened from your perspective. And his aunt, who was his mom's sister, the one, if you go back to, I guess that would be season 2, but she started sending him Bible studies that his mom wrote in her handwriting. She asked him not to do it. She said, please, don't do this. You took my sister from me, and now you're trying to take her character. And he just ended it because, there's a lot of, that was a small town.
That's another thing, though. I don't understand how him telling it takes her character, especially since, there's so much.
There were a lot of secrets. They were a prominent, very prominent family. If you go to the University of Alabama and you see Culver House School of Business, that's his family. But
I feel like the excitement for us is to tell it through the redemptive lens of the redemption.
But when you have that kind of clout, that kind of influence, you don't tell that.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of secrets, a lot of stuff that nobody ever knew. But through the process of him he slept in a bunk over me for 2+ years. He didn't just sit down and tell me the story all at once, but I would ask questions, and I didn't. I treaded lightly on asking him questions because this is rough.
But also, crime. I feel like you're not saying the fact that y'all became very, very good friends.
I don't know that there's another man on the planet that I've ever been closer to than Jason Hunter Culver House. He was my big brother. He was someone. Still to this day, I love him. And you can look at it like you're a murderer. And he is. He was. But you don't kill your family for no reason. Mm-hmm. So, and it wasn't about money. It had nothing to do with money. There was money that came in to play after that. But that story had nothing to do with money. It was more about abuse and power control, and it was awful, but I just feel like that story needs to be told.
So all that to be said, these are things that are coming for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to tell that story.
Yeah. And, all right. Well, I know we need to close.
And if you want to know, Google Culver House murders and just see what happens. because there's not a lot out there
Yeah.
about that. But I feel like I have a lot of intimate details that I want. I feel like the story needs to be told.
Yeah.
Freedom. Tell it.
We're going to tell it.
Do it. Was there anything else we need to talk about?
No, I think we covered all we can in this time.
Well,
but
you know,
season 4, it's coming.
It's
so
coming.
Be ready.
Coming soon. Stay tuned.
All right.
We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Straight Outta Prison podcast. For more exclusive content, head over to our website, teamjones.co/podcast.
Yes, you can subscribe by clicking on the Become a Patron button, and that's going to get you access to our For Real Reel, which is very different than the highlight reel.
It's
some
the real
very
deal.
juicy content there.
Good stuff. Or you can look us up on Facebook and Instagram, Straight Outta Prison podcast.
Yes, that takes the story to a whole new level where you can see some of the people that James talks about in his story and see some of the places that he's been. I've been loving it, and you will too.
Prison recipes.
Yeah, all the things.
Good stuff. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Getting anything out of these videos, please hit the like button, the subscribe. If you never want to miss a recipe or anything I do, hit the little bell and you'll get notifications. All right, so tonight I'm out to dinner with my wife. Some friends blessed us with an Italian dinner. They took care of our kids, and I'm able to focus 100% on her. And it really made me think, this is what I get to do when you hire me as a private chef. I take care of all the food, all the things, so that you get to focus on your guests. So, good stuff. Book us now.